The New York Football Giants win their season opener 21-20 on the road over the Tennessee Titans in the debut for head coach Brian Daboll. We break it all down next. Yeah, boys. It's OGP, the One Giant podcast, coming to you on a Sunday night post-game coverage. As we said, we were going to try to do all season long. And Andy, why not? Because gosh darn it, the New York Football Giants just won a football game on their season opener for the first time, as you said, since 2016 when we were talking before we got on here live. How are you, sir? Healthy, wealthy, and wise. I don't even need to ask the question. We know that you are.
Oh, baby. 1-0. That's all that matters. And you know what's nice, Adam? It's nice when you have a game that's never in doubt, that you're leading the whole time, and you just win
Wire
outright.
to wire.
And you never, wire. You just never have to worry about whether the Giants are going to come back. Like, you have to worry about anything. It was perfect that the Giants just did this in commanding fashion.
What up to everybody in the live chat? Obviously, we're gonna have a fun one here. Like we got 1, 2, 3 saying we did it. Like, isn't that enough? Like, just to say like we did it, because everyone knows where you're coming into this thing. And we're gonna go through a lot of the high level stuff, just the excitement, and this is a genuine excitement of being able to be. You and I were texting during the game. I was texting my Locked On Nets co-host Doug, saying like, first time that I've been able to be happy to be a Giants fan on a season opener since 2016. Like, this is what it's about, right? We have head coaching debut for Brian Daboll. There's obviously a big gutsy decision here. Got a new, obviously, I think this makes all the sense in the world. Annie, you stop me if you don't think it's right. Workshop this with Doug so it gets his seal of approval. Brian guts and nuts Daboll, because, man, it takes a little bit of those plums and a little bit of that gut check to make a call, like going for 2 when you are down 1 in under 2 minutes to play in the game. Just high level, man. Where's your energy at? Obviously, watching this one, seeing the Giants win, and as you mentioned, tongue in cheek, this was not a game that we necessarily came into and started to work our way through the first half feeling all too excited about things, and yet they got there, man. And sometimes we don't know how the season's going to turn out, but boy, does it feel good when you catch a break and have a field goal shank. I mean, what else can you say?
No, Adam, so you're exactly right. Everyone that's a Giant fan should feel good, because a win is a win, but not all wins feel the same way. This one actually felt really good. This one felt really good. I know it would have been nice to win the game outright and like, before everything, don't have to rely on a field goal kicker, tugging a 47-yard field goal. Sure. I get it. But Adam, I watched the Giants compete for the entire game, and it made me feel excited. It was no quit in this defense. You could tell Wink Martindale was like, guys, we're not moving the ball the way that we should. I need you to do one more thing for me. One more thing. And they kept doing it, and they delivered. And you know what? Listen, I'm going to start at the end of the game, and I'm going to talk about that 2-point conversion that Brian Daboll called, because that Dabes put his reputation on the line earlier. And
Sorry, you mean Brian Guts and Nuts?
Guts and Nuts. I mean, that's where you're going.
Name going forward.
Dave's. Oh my goodness, Adam. I was sitting. I'm going to a charity golf tournament tomorrow, listen. I'm going to this charity golf tournament tomorrow. Sitting with the hosts of the charity golf tournament, and I turned over to them when the Giants got the ball back, and I go, I think they're going to go for 2 if they end up getting in the end zone. And he's like, really? Why wouldn't they just kick the extra point? I'm like, you know why? Because this is a team that needs to change the perception, and they need to change the way people think about them. And I thought to myself, and I said this, I go, even if they miss it, it's the right move. And even if they make it and they lose the game, it's still the right move, because it just gave a different energy to all of us about what this team is willing to do to win a football game.
Yeah, shout out to K-Rock, shout out to LJ, Donald in the live stream, man, G537. Thank you for coming in on this live one. 100%, man. You could have gotten away with going for 2 and not being successful and still taking away a ton of positives in this game for sure. As we say, we're going to break things down into a finer powder over the course of the week. There's some other areas we want to talk about. But again, at the very highest of levels here, you do go for 2 there. I'm going to tell you too. I'm gonna put it underneath this heading of Saquon Barkley leads the Giants to victory. First New York Football Giant running back in franchise history to run for 150 plus yards in a season opener. I mean, the dude is clearly back in form, right? He's back in form. You can tell that he's excited, and it's hard in the off seasons when guys come off of injuries. They all talk the talk, right? Feeling good, getting out there, working the reps, loving it, right? And you go, gosh, I hope so.
The slow-mo videos, Adam, the slow-mo videos of like someone catching a pass or running. You're like, this guy's locked in. You're like, does it really translate to the regular season? But to your point, he delivered.
The shirts are off, right? The muscles are glistening. They're spritzing them down in between shoots. We all know, right? But yeah, he comes through. And just really quickly before we talk about him more in depth, on that 2-point conversion attempt, maybe you could say it's a little bit of the Brian Daboll Buffalo Bills. We know that Kafka was calling the plays. That to me had all of the look and essence of the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, right? You run this play, you try to give the defense multiple looks inside of one quick moment, and then set the table that, okay, it could have been a run. I could have been scrambling. Now I'm going to pass it. And then that little shovel pass push, right? And in so many other moments in Giants recent memory, that would have been off the back of Saquon's helmet because he wasn't looking for it, right? Off of a lineman, something. And instead it goes right into his hands. And then it's surge. He surges to get across the line there and keeps the knee off the ground. It's just like everything inside of that moment ultimately kind of does feel like the microcosm of this game, and like came out as flat as you possibly could. Let's just be clear. And slowly just they hung in there. You mentioned it before, right? Like there's a buy-in here, and never more than ever should it be at the start of the season, right? When you have everything in front of you. But I think it would have been really easy after the first 2 quarters to hang it up. And in year number 2 of Joe Judge, it was very easy for everyone to hang it up. Everybody stayed committed in this game, and it paid off, man. It's just fantastic.
You know what? I couldn't agree with you more about that 2-point conversion. That felt like the Patrick Mahomes, like little scoop pass that he does inside either to Kelsey or the running back or whoever. Like,
yeah, if we get those 5 touchdown passes that Mahomes threw today, we'd certainly be working with some. But listen,
I mean, listen, let's take baby
let's
steps
start.
here.
Let's start with wins. Let's start with wins,
baby steps. And listen, the Giants hung in this game. And listen, it was a different Giants game. It was the first time that they've had 2 plays of over 60 or more in a game in like almost a decade. There was explosive plays, which we hadn't seen under Joe Judge and Jason Garrett. Listen, it was not perfect. It was not great. There were challenges, but Adam, this was the number 1 seed in the AFC last year. And the Giants went into Nashville, Tennessee, and won a football game. Like, that means something in the larger context of where the Giants can go.
Oh, of course, man. Listen, it was a wild weekend, right? There's a lot of games going off, especially on Sunday, where you're like, I don't know which way is up here, right? A team like Pittsburgh is turning over Joe Burrow left, right, and center, and yet that still comes down with this opportunity, everything hanging in the balance. You got the Jaguars oddly somehow still competing in a game. Carson Wentz giving you the entire spectrum of his career in 4 quarters of football. To say nothing about the Detroit Lions that everyone enjoyed watching on Hard Knocks, right? And it looks like they're completely out of it. And then all of a sudden they're down just 3 points. Like, one of the things is, preseason extends into the regular season now. We know the reduction of reps and only 3 of those games, and maybe only really 1, and maybe only really 3 snaps, whatever it may look like for all these teams. And I think it helps a team like the Giants. It helps the underdog teams or the teams that are building on something and think are going to be, a long journey over the course of the season, because the other teams that maybe have everything figured out, like Tennessee, they don't know what the Giants are, right? And you come out and look and win. I think the Giants did a great job over the course of this game, kind of evolving what they were and what our expectations were. And that caught, I think, Tennessee off guard a couple of times and gave them some big plays. Like Sterling Shepard was invisible until all of a sudden he sprinkled into that drive and then made an absolutely big play. Brief little pause here as we are in the live chat. Want to shout out to a couple of things here. as we say. Chris Hanley. Is that Hanley there?
Yeah,
Barkley
Hanley,
rumbling,
hand dog.
stumbling, bumbling for the old Chris rumbling, stumbling, fumbling, bumbling for 60 plus. Yeah, man. Like that was a massive play. And I didn't see it perfectly today, the way we saw it in some of those couple preseason handoffs, that north and south. But he did it a couple of times, man. And even outside of that 60 plus yard play, he had the one where he got to the edge and he just kind of shifted his shoulder in, right? And got in between a couple of tackles and fell forward for those 7 and 8 yard pickups. His gain today, man, to stay on him a little bit longer here was nothing short of phenomenal, and such a, like, he's the face, man. For this year, we don't know what happens after it, but he is the face of, like, the Giants' return to any level of competitiveness this season.
And Adam, listen, I could not have been more wrong about the way that they were going to utilize Saquon.
That's true.
I will
Very
say,
wrong, yeah.
I will say the pick of the week was Saquon Barkley over 27 and a half yards. He got 30 yards. So congratulations to everyone that listens to the show.
That's right.
Put some shekels in, as you like to say.
Oh my God,
and
I
hits.
didn't even,
yeah, exactly. That
I didn't even check. No, I didn't check my insane. I didn't check my insane same game parlay.
Well, you're going to do it in real time. I will talk while you do that in real time. I thought that the key was going to be getting, Gary Brightwell, Matt Breida, Antonio Williams, whoever was going to be out there, the tough yards in the middle. And instead they said, no, Saquon is the workhorse. Every time he touches the ball, there's a chance to take this thing deep. We have to get him touches. He had 18 carries today, Adam. That is double what I thought he was going to get. He had 164 yards on the ground. He had 30 yards. He almost had 200 yards all purpose. Yep. Unbelievable by Saquon Barkley. We've talked about it before. He is the engine. Daniel Jones is a guy that we need to take steps forward. But in order for this team to compete, Saquon Barkley needs to be that guy where he can actually rip off a bunch of yards and get us into plus territory like he did a few times.
Oh, no, 100%, man. I did win. I think I won one small one here. A little same game parlay that worked out for me with some people scoring.
I know you missed the big one. You missed your big parlay. We talked about this before.
Let's just get in here, okay? In the same game parlay category, where we chopped off that one leg of the spider and then went for it. And I told you about a different one that I missed by one field goal, but nevertheless, you know what I missed it on? I missed that parlay on over 3.5 receptions for Kadarius Toney. Something we'll tap into later in the week, because that's going to get off our positive track. And that's where we want to be saying.
That is another interesting thing that we have to talk about. We're going to talk about a little bit of the negatives, not so much in terms of like the Kadarius Toney piece of it, which I think is important. But Wan'Dale Robinson going out with a knee injury, I don't know if you've heard it yet. I haven't gotten any word on what the situation is. It's not good when they rule someone out for the rest of the game with a knee injury. Yeah. It's usually a bad sign for the Giants, which is tough because he was making plays a little bit early on. He seemed like a little bit of a security blanket, like he got to the number, made a play for Daniel Jones, and you were like, oh, this is what his role is going to be. We're going to have to see what ends up happening with Wan'Dale. That might change the dynamic. But Adam, the wide receiver that is interesting to me is Richie James. Like, what happened there? Like, we all missed how important he was going to be to this offense.
Well, and it now goes hand in hand, right? Wan'Dale goes out with the injury. We'll check in on that during the week, and Kadarius Toney is nowhere to be found. There's something to that. I'm sure we're going to hear about it, or maybe we won't. But that to me, we know he's coming off of injuries and trying to get himself healthy. But everything about that felt like a decision, an active decision by this coaching staff, by this offense, to approach this game in a very specific way. He got into the game later on, had a little end around, scooted for some yards, and guess what? He looked every bit of the human joystick that we've known him to be from the small sample size last year, right? Tried to use him again on an end around, looking to throw the ball, didn't work out, and he still scurried for 4 or 5 yards. So we'll have to wait and see, but Richie James was reliable and consistent. We know they dropped the pass. One thing I'm going to tell you right now, if you're one of those people that was like, got to make those catches, guess what? No, he doesn't, because he's not supposed to be that guy. The fact that he had as many catches as he did in this game and was able to step up and also contribute in the return game, Richie James did everything and much more beyond the expectations that you had for him. And I do just want to say, go ahead, and then I want to cover something here pretty important relative to how this game started and how the Giants finished this game.
Okay, yeah. So the Richie James piece is tough. Obviously, Wandell goes out. We don't know yet what's going on with Kadarius Toney. Like, there's some speculation. Like, is he hurt? Did they suspend him for like the first quarter of the game because he's not out? There's like a million things going
Doesn't
on.
matter. We'll know it
Like,
when we know it,
we're
right?
we're gonna figure that out in the next couple of days. No point in speculating, especially against a win for the Giants.
Mm-hmm.
But man, Richie James looked good. Like he caught 5 balls. He was only behind Saquon Barkley in the pecking order in terms of the amount of catches that he had.
Yep.
He was in the punt. He looked shifty in the punt and kick return game, like in special teams. He seems like a weapon that the Giants are like, oh, he came off a leg injury last season. Like maybe we're catching a diamond in the rough here that can contribute more than other people thought he could.
No, 100%, man. Like you said, you have 5 for 59 for Richie James in this game, 11.6 yards, 11.8 yards per reception, right? So a chain mover. When you look inside of these numbers for the receiving group, Kenny Golladay had a couple. We'll talk about him too. He seemed a little bit out of sorts in the start of this game, but then had a couple of, had a couple nice catches, helped move the chains. But he had 2 for 22. That's 11 yards per. I mentioned Richie James there, 11.8. Sterling Shepard, 2, won the big bomb there for 71 yards. So big catches there inside of that group as well. I thought that was important to go along with, Saquon Barkley, 6 for 30. We're going to call that the safety valve, right? And you took it on the chin as far as I was wrong about how they're going to use Saquon. But this is a week-to-week, game-by-game, right, kind of thing. I think it's smart to have Saquon as the safety valve, but we don't know what it's going to look like in week 2 or in week 6 or in week 10, right? It's going to evolve over the course of this season. But what you do need to have is, Richie James, I think, is important to highlight for the reason that he's the new guy. Same way that Matt Breida is one of the new guys, right? So even when you go in and you look at the rushing results and you see that Matt Breida ran the ball 5 times for 24 yards and 4.8 yards per carry, that matters because these are the players that Joe Shane and Brian Daboll and Kafka and we haven't even gotten to the defense, right? Ward was clearly an emotional cornerstone for this defense early in the game when we know we got to get into that here in a second about what they didn't have and what they were able to accomplish. These are the new players, and they matter on both sides of the ball. So Richie James, a new player to this team, came in and clearly is doing exactly what this coaching staff envisioned him being capable of.
You know what? You mentioned the defense, and I think that's where we're going to go to next, Adam.
Mm.
Credit.
Real quick. Go ahead.
Yep. No, I was going to say credit where credit is due. The defense stepped up in a huge way. You look at the final score, you say 21-20. Okay, they gave up 20 points. What does that mean? Like, okay, they kept you in it. They did more than that, Adam. Like, I honestly believe that like they got punched in the face right at the beginning of the game where the Giants couldn't move the ball.
Mm-hmm.
There's a huge punt return, 5 plays, touchdown for the Titans. Giants are down 7-0. And in previous regimes or other ways, the Giants said, look, it's a kiss of death. And it's like, thanks for coming out. That is it for the Giants, right? And you know what? This defense, while they didn't play spectacular, the one thing that they did was stop Derrick Henry from controlling the game. And that was the big difference to me in how this game went, because Derrick Henry has the ability to take over a game, Adam, and he didn't. He had 21 rushes for 82 yards, less than 4 yards a carry. And if you're going to do that to Derrick Henry and you say, all right, Ryan Tannehill, you have to go win the game more often than not with your arm, that's where the Giants put themselves in a better position for success. And to me, that was the big takeaway for me. I didn't see as much pass rush as I would like, but obviously players were out. But Derrick Henry being stopped for under 100 yards was a big win for the Giants.
And this is one of the benefits of playing Tennessee Titans week 1, right? Derrick Henry coming off of an injury, misses the back half of last season, right? So there's, as we're seeing in the comments, right? There's rust there. Shout out to Barry. Rust on Derrick Henry for sure. But you didn't give up any of those really big plays. Big shout out to Tate Crowder, who laid some wood on Derrick Henry going through that middle there. I mean, he upended Derrick Henry in a big way, and that matters. You got to lay some hits on a player like that. Now, Henry came right back and consistently over the remainder of the game lowered his shoulder, and he's that type of player. And I think there was 2 sides of this for the defensive side of the ball, and we talked about it leading up to the game. Ward, big component of it. They sacrificed having more linebackers, right? More edge rushers, more secondary personnel, and started having more big boys in and around that box to try to slow down Derrick Henry. And when you look at the box score and you see that Ryan Tannehill was 20 for 33 for 266, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, you go, man, that's a heck of a nice stat line for Tannehill. And you go, yeah, great. Because the thing we don't want is to have Derrick Henry having a Saquon Barkley type line. So I think in that sense, Wink Martindale very much picked his poison. And again, the really hard part, and this is what I wanted to contextualize this with. At the end of the game here, this is what we end up with when we talk about total plays in this one, 58 to 60. 2 more plays for the Tennessee Titans. The Giants only ran 27 plays in the first half. And at one point, they were being outmargined by 33 to 44 in favor of the Tennessee Titans. So they went and then they had another 25 plays relative to 16 for the Tennessee Titans. They were able to get stops defensively when they needed them, right? And by the way, tip of the cap to the Tennessee Titans offense, because 2 times in this game, they made what I can only frame as the dumbest decision I've ever seen in my life. In short distance yardage, even though Henry looked a little rusty, they chose to go with trick plays and put guys out on islands where the Giants were able to swarm defensively and make collective efforts. It was not perfect on that side of the ball, right? A lot of things we'll get into the week, but I really thought that they did a good job in totality of the game, especially knowing that those first, 5 possessions, 4 punts and a turnover for the Giants offense. There was not a lot going there for them. And we've always talked about this in past years. Balance, giving your defense a breather, right? And it felt like it was building that way. Really nice adjustments at halftime. Go for the big strike, get yourself back in the game, and try to get yourself back on an even footing so your defense still has some gas left in the tank.
Hey, listen, you talked about the offense for the Titans. The defense, give them all the credit. They didn't get home very often. They only sacked Ryan Tannehill 1 time, and it was at the line of scrimmage. They could not get the pressure that they normally do. And there were times, even during the final drive, where they were rushing him, where he just threw the ball away to avoid a sack. There were some good pressures from the Giants. They were missing Azeez Ojulari. They were missing Kayvon Thibodeau. And they were bend, don't break. They tried their best to do it. What I will say, Adam, is, and I'm going to turn this over for 1 minute because we have to talk about it.
You turn it over, buddy.
It's Daniel Jones, buddy. We got to talk about him for a half a second. Okay. And let me just say one thing to you, because Ryan Tannehill was 20 of 32 for 266 and 2 touchdown passes, no interceptions. Mm-hmm. He kind of did everything he needed to do to put his team in position to win the game. And guess what? Daniel Jones had a better passer rating than Ryan Tannehill. So think about that for a second.
Where I don't need to think about that though, because here's the deal. And we talked about this before. I said I'm going to give 3 games before we contextualize what we think this team is. Much rather it be starting off on a win, right? Much rather have positive vibes than not. But the one thing that I'm going to tell you is that when we look at Daniel Jones, and as you mentioned it, stat line is 17 of 21, $188, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. So sub 200 yards. And again, we all know offensive line struggled. They were doing a little bit of fun rotational work there. A la Joe Judge. Didn't love that. We'll talk about it. But there was difficulties there. Pass protection was a struggle. And yet, what we got out of this game was the sample size of Daniel Jones that we've seen so far in his career to this point, right? Hey, he's a guy under a lot of pressure. Sometimes when he gets out, again, you and I were texting about this. When he was fully mobile and on the run, threw one right in the dirt. When he was fully mobile on the run and then planted his feet, that's when he found, I think that was the Wan'Dale Robinson connection to get the first down. The things that he's not good at, he doesn't seem to have gotten better at, as far as we can tell. And then the most important piece, we all know, I'm not going to blame him for getting completely blindsided, having a fumble. I mean, good Lord, right? Ole on his blind side there. And yet, that's something that's followed him. He has the fumble, and this is the most egregious one, and we all know it. And doesn't tell me anything yet. He tried to be mobile. He looks a little bit slower in terms of holding that ball and really running with it. And he still looks clumsy in how he tries to get those yardage. But it's the back shoulder fade to Saquon Barkley in the end zone. That's the play call. And there's a progression there. After you see that either is one of 2 things, you make it quick, you make the decision and you go, or you don't and you move on. And the one thing we talked about with Daniel Jones is he finds it, he likes it, he loves it, he goes for it. And in that instance, it was literally lobbing an interception to the other team. And I'm not going to berate him here. There was a lot of things that I liked. The deep bomb to Sterling Shepard was very good. There were moments when he was very decisive, when he stepped up in the pocket. So there are positive things here. But overall, one game, the first game sample, I go, okay, yeah, still where I think I am, still neutral on where my thoughts are around Daniel Jones.
Yeah, there's a difference between Aaron Rodgers throwing a back shoulder to Devontae Adams when he was on the team, where it's like they just know that the timing of it is so perfect, where like Devontae doesn't turn around to the last second and it hits his shoulder pad and he just catches it, to what Saquon and Daniel Jones are trying to do, which Saquon's like,
Saquon turned
are you
around,
gonna throw it? Are you gonna throw it? Are you gonna throw it? And then he's like,
yeah.
maybe he wants me to turn around and go back to the end zone. It was a mess. It was a bad throw, trying to make a play. But Adam, 5 sacks, I would argue there was a lot of pressure.
Well, I know.
It still felt like the offensive line was a challenge. This is not an offensive line where you felt like Daniel Jones had enough time to be able to go through reads or progressions and make plays. He did enough to get this team in position. And what I will say is, when the chips are down and you have 2 minutes to go down the field,
you
and
want
make
the ball,
a play,
you want the ball in the hands of Saquon Barkley.
Right,
but
he got it down the field.
Let's save it. Let's save it for the week, buddy. Because we don't.
But you're right.
Let's not go to negative town here.
No,
let's save it for the week.
But you're right. I'm agreeing with you. The offense needs to focus on Saquon Barkley. There's no question about it. If people had concerns about whether his health was there or not, the contract thing is a whole nother thing that we can deal with in the offseason. But when he is healthy, he is our best player. He is our best player. And that is most important, to get him those touches. He still got 6 receptions for 30 yards. Yeah. He got 18 carries. They gave him almost 25 touches. They were like, you are our guy. And if he can stay healthy and they're giving Saquon 20 touches, you're looking at 2019 all over again. Like, he has that ability still in him, Adam.
100%, man. Shout out to Tuto, obviously, with the, I think that's the Bane body image, or it could be Tuto, man. He's a rugby player, so we have no idea what this guy's capable of. Could be Saquon Barkley. I don't know what's going on over there. Bottom line is, man, he always gives us the massive shout out, and we appreciate him, the frequent flyer on the show that he is. And I think you're right. I think that's the identity of this team. I want to talk a little bit about the secondary for the Giants defense. This is kind of an even tempered kind of thing. I was disappointed that Darnay Holmes got called on a handful of penalties, just for the simple fact that I was so excited for him and he seemed to struggle a little bit. And I think he's going to against shiftier receivers, and that's a lot of the matchups that he was getting caught in here. Maybe Aaron Robinson got away with tackling the wide receiver. We don't know for sure. The tape was blurry. This is 1983. We don't even know if the replay works or not. For the most part, they held their own. Robert Woods wasn't a big factor. Surprisingly, I thought that the rookie receiver for Tennessee, Burke, I thought that he was dangerous, right? But the Giants in the secondary, I'd like to say, based on the QB you're going up against, I know you look at the stat line, no interceptions, couldn't get pressure on them, but all those factors considered, I think you have to take a step back. And I know we talked about it there with the defense. Hey, man, we weren't really like multi-dimensional on that side of the ball. It was just a matter of, let's not give it up in one big chunk. Let's make them earn it. And that was an opportunity, I think, for them to learn. Like, I liked how the team learned on both sides of the ball throughout this game. And this goes to coaching. They came out of halftime just a little bit sharper about what it was going to look like, how they were going to go about it. They knew it wasn't going to be perfect, but they made the incremental adjustments, something that we haven't seen from a coaching staff in years for the Giants either.
Well, Adam, I just keep going back to Brian Daboll, Dabe's nuts and guts, as you like to describe it. And I think to myself, as we're moving down the field, it felt like we finally had a head coach that was thinking the same way that we are as fans of what we expect the Giants to do. Like, I immediately was like, oh, we're in Nashville against the number 1 seed last year, like a 12-win team. We need to go win this game. And guess what? I can live with going for 2 there and not getting it and saying we were trying to win a football game, as opposed to sitting back and saying bend, don't break, which is what the mentality has been. So for me, Adam, like, that decision really solidified that the identity of this team is exactly starting to line up with what the fan base and the team is supposed to be made of, right?
I agree with you 100%. in go for the wins and have that aggression. And I think the big benefit for Brian Daboll in these moments in this game and for the entire season is I got nothing to lose.
Right.
There's no pressure in this year, right? And that was the guise that we were all underneath from this franchise for the last 2, 3, 4 seasons of, well, we got some players, we got some names on this roster, some talented guys. We spent a lot of money. We're in massive amounts of debt here, so you'd like to think that we're going to be good, right? And instead, now it's, hey, man, we know we got holes in the linebacking core. We know that the secondary isn't perfect. The offensive line is going to need work. We don't know what the weapon, right? It's not all perfect. Daniel Jones is a question mark. And guess what? Watch this. Shoot from the hip, right? We get down in there, we get an opportunity. And I think game script matters a lot too. From the way this game started to the where you were, right? Hey, we had no business being down 20-19 after scoring a touchdown with an opportunity to get a 2-point conversion and take the lead. I think that plays a massive factor too, right? You don't get down to that point in maybe a game that's been neck and neck or battling, or that you've been really able to dominate the defensive side of the ball and you feel confident, hey man, we can go and we can shut them down and get this thing back. And timeline on that is all different. But because it was this uphill battle of being down the entire game, that was the crowning moment. Hey, we go do this, we get the lead, and then and on top, what we always say, and now we turn it over to the defense and we want them to hold up. And was that perfect? Of course it wasn't. But that's the way it is. Like that's sports, that's football. And I'd rather have taken the risk in that moment and tried to get the lead and then known we've lost it. And I think that's what you're saying, right? I'll win or lose it right now, here on my terms, not on take the tie, try to get to overtime, see what happens. Because guess what? 7 weeks from now, we're not going to think about that delicate decision-making process. We're going to be thinking about, did the coach show confidence in his team to go accomplish something in a game where they weren't perfect?
It's the antithesis of QB sneaks on 2nd and 3rd down, having no confidence in your team to win. And I know you may say, well, different circumstance, different position. Giant fans,
I don't care what different circumstance or
we
not.
weren't competing at that point. We were not
just
competing.
ineptitude. That was just in that moment of the franchise. That was a coaching staff and a collective organization that was done.
Right.
I know you know what I mean.
That's my point. Is like this coaching staff is saying, I am going to try to go win a football game.
Yeah.
I am not going to try to mitigate damage of how bad we lose the game because we're inept on offense. They said Daniel Jones may have struggled a little bit. We may have not moved the ball as much as we wanted on offense. Saquon is everything. But you know what? We can dial up 1 or 2 plays here and go win a football game on the road against a really good team. And that galvanizes the locker room. Do you know how happy those players are?
Did you see the post game?
I didn't. No.
The post game. Oh, buddy, just wait until we wrap this thing up and you go see Brian Daboll, center circle, full team around him. The music is blasting. He's breaking it down one time. He's looking as natural as any middle-aged white male would look in those settings. But it's the full celebration, man, fully in the bag. And if you're trying to set that tone, confidence in the team, confidence in yourself, and you go get it. And what I'm going to give this caveat in a very positive way, though, going for that 2-point conversion and asking Daniel Jones to execute that play and to push that flip, that's all evaluation too. That's all a part of, can you go do this thing? And one thing that I want to point to here, I said it over on Twitter as well. After that interception, Daniel Jones is on the bench. First time I've seen it in his entire time as New York Football Giant. First time I've seen any head coach address him in this way. Brian Daboll went over to him, asked, what was that, essentially? He said, going for the old back shoulder fade there. And it was just head shakes and no, you can't do that. You have to work through the progressions. You have to find the better way out of that. You cannot turn this ball over in this circumstance. There's a level of accountability that you want when a new regime comes in. They've brought that, and it extends all the way up to Daniel Jones. So I think that it's really important, because then you're also going to know, hey, Daniel Jones, can you respond to that? Can you execute the plays, get us down the field? And then in that moment, hey, was it a full-blown pass? Maybe, maybe not. But he still had to shovel the damn thing, and he did it.
Coach these players up. Coach them up. That's what they're doing. And guess
Test
what? And guess what, Adam? I'll take it a step further. The play that they called was a play that he could execute that wasn't asking Daniel Jones to do too much. It was keeping him inside of himself, saying, hey, read the defense and flip this ball to our best player, and let's get let's go in here for the 2-point conversion. To your point, we're not asking Daniel Jones to light the world on fire week 1. We're asking him to manage the game, do the right things, make the right choices. And when
Yeah.
it comes down to it, we're going to give him a little bit more responsibility to go win the game. And him and Saquon went and did that.
Saquon went and did that. Now, when we talk about the overall stat lines in this one, I'm blown away to look at this thing and just see the Giants had 394 yards of total offense, and the Titans only had 359. I am flabbergasted by that. The Giants averaged 6.8 yards per play. Now, if you take the one big bomb to Sterling Shepard, it's going to make things look different. But guess what? We don't take out one play over the course of a game. Every single one counts. Even money on first downs. Neither team good on third downs. We're going to deal with the Giants side of it during the week. But again, a defense that's missing a lot of pieces. You held the Tennessee Titans to 3 for 11 on third downs. That I thought really mattered as well. Giants converted a fourth down. We said the plays were even money, basically. Gave up a lot of sacks, had a lot of punts. I can make the case here in this one that the Giants, the penalties, 8 for 45, right? A lot of things to clean up, certainly in that aspect. And the one other part here was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, at one point in this game, the time of possession was 24 and change for Tennessee to 16 and change for the Giants. They finished this one 29 to 31, still in favor of Tennessee, but they closed that gap again there. And that was all about at the end of that third quarter into the fourth. When you get your hands on this ball, man, you got to find a way to sustain some drives, give yourself opportunities. And I fall prey to this. Sometimes I get swept up in, well, it's got to be this, right? It's got to be a touchdown on this drive. It's got to be a very specific thing. And instead, I found myself just saying, no, just show that you can take this ball, protect it, and change the field position a bit here, right? Have a couple of these opportunities. And as we said at the top, with how good Saquon Barkley looked, that's what you are. 1 or 2 handoffs away from a 10 to 15 to 25 to 40-yard run downfield that all of a sudden makes this team more dynamic offensively than we've known it to be. And you can get us out of here, but I think there's something very full circle about Saquon Barkley being back in shape and doing what he did to open up the season for the New York Football Giants and for the fan base. And that Sterling Shepard was a part of that too. The deep bomb touchdown. He had that one other catch. He got into it a little chippy on the sidelines with the Tennessee Titans. Like, man, whatever's going to happen from here, I don't care, because that was a moment that Giants fans really deserve to have to start a season off, and we can deal with the rest as the weeks come.
Adam, at the end of the day, my friend, I have 2 things to tell you. 1, the Giants are 1-0, baby.
No one can take that. Right? It's only on the standings, baby.
Listen, no one can take that away. The Giants are tied for the division lead after 1 game, my friend.
And when we talk about the division and the season, Washington wins, right? Philly wins. We don't know what Dallas is going to do. We'll find out, right? But boy, you'd hate to be the only team that didn't win in the division to start the season, right? Like, you'd hate to have that be the energy we're rolling with.
And at the end of the day, number 2, Adam, is the Giants are favored next week at home against the Carolina Panthers by 1.5 points. The Giants are 1-0. The betting odds say they're expected to hold serve at home and win. This is an opportunity for the Giants to go 2-0 and surprise all the pundits that said the Giants were done. They're going to win 3 games and move on.
What else can we say? But boom, Doug Norrie. Look at that beautiful mug of his. You can catch us over on the Locked On Nets podcast. No reason we can't do a shameless plug here or there. Bottom line is, man, we have a lot to break down. We've got the access to the all 22 film, so we're going to be talking about some of those different angles. We will talk about Daniel Jones a little bit more in depth. What did he do well? Where did he miss opportunities? Things that, like, when you're watching that game in real time, it all looks sexy or horrible, and you miss some of those fine details. We're going to dive back in on that, update injuries and everything else. You know the deal, friends. You follow us over on YouTube. You subscribe. You share it with those you love, those that you know need to know more about the New York Football Giants. You get the podcast on the feeds, wherever you get those needs fulfilled. And as Andy Makowitz would want, need, and on a day like today, nay, demand the people know.
As always, let's go Big Blue.